Get fact-checked. This book really impacted my life. Shout out to Philosophy Demons and let's roast somebody. There's a lot of death scenes. There's also, what, you egg? Stabs him, so that's fun. Yo, what is up, guys? It is Daniel back with another video, and today we are going to be making a tier list of all of the literature books that I read in my time at Covenant, at least to my memory. So I'm going to be ranking them S to F. There may be some surprises in here for you, and I definitely know which year was my favorite in terms of literature. So let me know y'all's tier list down in the comment section. I will, Lord willing, have a link to it in the description, but let's get into the ranking. So, starting with 7th grade and the Fellowship of the Ring. I like Lord of the Rings. I think it is overrated. I'm sorry to all the lovers out there. I think it was a decent book, though. B. We're gonna go with B. You know, that's a decent starting place. Next, we have Huckleberry Finn. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember that much other than I think Huckleberry Finn like running away at the beginning, and then he went on a raft down a river, probably the Mississippi River. I remember thinking it wasn't that good. And if I have a negative opinion of it, it's probably going in D. I'm going to be harsh, okay? Huckleberry Finn's going in D. Continuing in 7th grade, we have Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Apparently, the people I've talked to really didn't like this book. I thought it was fine. There were some things I did like, and at least one story I wasn't a huge fan of in it. But most of them I think I like, generally. So I'm going to put it in C, because I remember thinking, like, none of the stories, like, really stood out to me. It was all just like, and then there was one I didn't like. I don't remember really what the one I didn't like was. So, C. Next, in 7th grade, we've got Frankenstein. Now, this book cover is cool, this painting. I'm going to put this as B, another B. I thought it was an interesting concept of, like, someone creating a monster. Also, Frankenstein's the name of the guy who made the monster, and not the actual monster. Get fact-checked! No. But, I mean, it's true, but it doesn't really matter too much. I thought it was interesting, but I thought the story was lacking in some parts. And then my favorite book of 7th grade, I don't think we read them in this order, because I don't think this was last. I could be wrong. But Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, an A. I really liked this, like, dichotomy of this guy, like, I guess the self-wrestling that he had. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. It's not really like a surprise book, like you see it coming, especially like literally on the cover. But I thought it was an interesting concept, especially as a 7th grader. Overall, I would say 7th grade literature is pretty average. Ironically, I didn't like that class, but when I look at the books now, it was a pretty decent reading experience. And now we're moving on to 8th grade, double 4. So how do I say this? This was probably my least favorite year of literature, to be quite honest. Call of the Wild is our first one, and I remember thinking it wasn't that good. I think I'd also had read it already as a child, so reading again wasn't that appealing. D. Let's roast somebody. Okay, Pygmalion F. Literally, this book made no sense to me. I remember it was like someone with like a speechophone or something, whatever it's called. It was like he was like phonograms. Basically there was a girl and then a guy with phonograms, and they didn't fall in love, which is fine. He literally had to write an explanation of why they didn't fall in love, though. I don't know. I remember thinking the story was boring. I remember we had to act it out, and I was like, I don't want to act this out. This is super boring. So, F. Okay, I might get some hate for this one, if I already haven't gotten hate for Lord of the Rings. Yeah, won't be surprised. This is one of my teacher's favorite books, or one of them for sure. To Kill a Mockingbird. Again, I had already read that as a child, and because we were in like 8th grade, I felt like I didn't really gain anything new from it. So it was just like, it's a good book, but so C. It's a C for me. I still remember to this day, we wrote a paper about this next book. I believe Joaquin was the only one who wrote from a certain perspective, and then everyone else agreed on like whether this guy did or did change. But Henry and the Red Badge of Courage, was a D for me. It was pretty boring. All I remember was like someone died and there was like probably a moral dilemma. And I think there was something about him like continuing walking. Like walking was a big deal, marching with the troops, and he was like, maybe I should leave, but I can't really stop because that'll show I'm not courageous or proving courage or something like that. Finally, for 8th grade, we have Invisible Man. I actually think we read this earlier in the year. I remember really enjoying this book. I found it to be the most entertaining. So it's going to get the highest grade of 8th grade with a B. So the highest one being a B, and you got a couple D's and an F. I think this was probably my least favorite year of books. Now we move on to 9th grade. And in 9th grade, there's this little thing called Harvey. And so it definitely wrecked some of our plans. But one of the things that changed is we ended up reading a book that Mrs. Collins recommended called Up From Slavery. And I guess, how do I say this? This book really impacted my life. It inspired me to collect books that I thought to be great. And one day I'm planning on having like a big bookshelf of them. And this one is most certainly going to be on there. This guy's a great man. It's a great book. I actually learned a lot from it. And I'm going to put an S tier. First S tier of the list. Maybe there's more. Maybe there's not. Gotta stick around to find out. Okay, so you know how I said last year was the worst year, the 8th grade? You could argue after that S, this one's worse, but I think the S has to make up for it. But you can determine that for yourself. So we have Till We Have Faces Volume 1. And by that I mean we read this in 9th grade for the first time. And it was literally the worst book I have ever read. No, but seriously, like, I remember being so confused as to what happened, to where I literally didn't understand anything that happened before a rule comes back from seeing Psyche. And even then, I missed basically all of the symbolism. And then there's something later about, like, rocks and her, like, discovering herself or something. And I was so confused. Like, when I read that scene, I gave up. I was like, this book is awful. So, yeah, the first time, literally the worst book I ever read. The worst book I ever read in literature class, to clarify. So we have that F, and then we have another F in Antigone, I think it's Antigone. I'm going to put this in F because I literally don't remember it. So, yeah, sorry. Honestly, it probably wasn't that bad, but I literally remember nothing about it. Then we have the Iliad. Pretty boring. I don't know. It was interesting because it was our first introduction to this, I guess, Homeric style and the Greek epics. But I don't know. I don't really care that much about those people's family heritage. You know? I wish it were more entertaining. I cared a lot about being entertained, especially when I was younger. Even now, I still care about it more than most do, I think. Like, personally, I don't hate the 8th Star Wars that much, because I found it decently entertaining, and I didn't care about plot holes. Sorry, guys. Next, we have the Odyssey, which I thought was better than the Iliad. It was more action-packed. I think you could argue this was an A, but I have it as a B, like a B+, so I guess we could put it over here if we really want. Maybe I'll do that at the end if I care to do so. So we have the Odyssey at B, and then the Aeneid I'm going to put at C. It seemed like a good book. I probably would put it at B, other than the fact that we didn't read it all. That's going to be a common theme as we see later. We don't always finish the last book of the year. So the Aeneid, we kind of rushed through. We skipped a bunch of chapters. I don't think we even got to the end, even with skipping the chapters. So I feel like I can't really give it more than a C. That wraps up 9th grade. Now we move on to 10th grade. And I'm not going to lie, we did not read that many books in 10th grade. So we've got Beowulf. I remember, like, being more like, there's a Beowulf and then the giant. And I remember thinking, oh, I didn't realize he was a giant, which is weird because I feel like I've heard that story before. I guess maybe I thought of it as more like a Jack and the Beanstalk, whereas before I thought of it as like a man versus a giant, maybe, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I don't know. I just thought it wasn't that good. D. I am roasting these books. Oh my goodness. Okay, Paradise or Paradiso. So it sounds like people don't like this compared to Inferno. I've never read Inferno. I really like Paradiso. This was, I thought, a book that our teacher at the time did a really excellent job of explaining to us, or at least getting us to consider certain ideas. So I'm putting it at least in B. I have it as, I literally wrote B plus, so it would probably be over here. Yeah. Oh, whoops. Oh, we have Dr. Faustus. I didn't realize I had this many roasting sessions. I have this as an F. We literally debated for like half a year, no, not really, like 2 weeks though, about whether this was a super classic or not, based on our definition. And it was basically whether it had inexhaustible wisdom, I think. I think that was a qualification. Maybe it was that it stood the test of time. It was one of those two. And people were arguing about it, whether it was a super classic or just a classic. I remember it was mainly Gabby and Alex versus everyone. Actually, I was going to say certain people, but I think it was mainly Gabby and Alex at one point, and everyone else was like, no. Wow, look at this. I kind of roasted our books. But I literally don't think I'm that in, like, I don't think this is inaccurate. I think this is fairly good. Midnight Ranch Dream was interesting. Honestly, maybe this should be a B. I feel like a lot of these C's could be B's. But, I mean, maybe we want some variety. So I'm going to go with, I went with C. Like, it was fine. I feel like I'm not that into Shakespeare, you know? But it was better than I thought it would be, for its credit. Now we go to 11th grade, and speaking of not being into Shakespeare, but being pleasantly surprised, we have Macbeth, which is going to be a B. I really enjoyed acting this one out. There's a lot of death scenes. There's also, what, you egg? Stabs him, so that's fun. And, yeah, this was, it was really enjoyable to act out, and even the story, though I'd already kind of heard it before, it wasn't as boring as some of the other ones I'd already heard or read. We also have Paradise Lost, which, similar to the Aeneid, I mean, this one wasn't even at the end of the year. This was at the beginning. We just chose to read, like, the first 4 chapters, so shout out to Philosophy Demons, but I'm going to give it a C because, well, I thought what we read of it was fairly decent and could be, like, B or maybe even, I mean, it has potential to be more than that, or I guess less, but because of my lack of knowledge in reading, I'm just going to give it a C. I thought these were both Jane Eyre for a second, and I kind of freaked out. Okay, Sense and Sensibility. I remember thinking my class really liked this one. I thought it was overrated. It was fine. There are aspects of it that I was like, that's too fantasized, even though it's supposed to be like a realistic setting. I don't know. I'm going to give it a C. So, Dracula. I mean, shameless plug. Go check out Dracula on YouTube. Here's a little clip. Especially with the song and the dedication we put into it. I feel like I have to give Dracula at least an... I think it could be a B or an A, but especially with this song, it's got to be A for me. I guess I really like this aspect of, like, there's this darkness, but yet this band of people, they come together and they defeat the darkness, which is pretty cool. And then we have Jane Eyre, which I thought was just an objectively better version of Sense and Sensibility. And I know that obviously is kind of a joke, but I thought it was much better than Sense and Sensibility. I thought it was more realistic. Although, I mean, you could argue the ending's not, but I didn't even read the ending. I just was told about it because, yet again, we read it at the end of the year and that got cut off. And this was also COVID year, 11th grade, so yeah. But I gave it a B. I think that's fine. I don't think it really could be an A for me, but I think B is fair. And now we come to 12th grade. We started off our year with That Hideous Strength, and Mr. Hyde at one point asked us to argue something for a rhetoric practice, and I argued that Hideous Strength was the best literature book we've ever read, so you already know I'm giving it an S. I thought, especially, like, the different ways that the evil characters end up, spoiler alert, dying, was pretty interesting, and also this concept of, like, your choice impacting what happens, and, like, what these different realms look like, even especially nice with, like, what, I guess, humanity's sinfulness can look like. Pretty cool. So, yeah, I really enjoyed That Hideous Strength. This is a trilogy. I haven't read the other 2 parts, but this ending to the trilogy was very well written. Next, we have Brave New World, which I also thought was an excellent book. It talks about this concept of, like, we simply want to be entertained and pleasured, and we want to avoid pain at all costs, and what life would look like without that. Or without pain. So, I think it's kind of scary, like, what our world could turn into and is, like, pointing towards in our current lives. I thought it was excellent work. Whoops. And I gave it an A, if I can move it. There you go. So we have The Great Gatsby. I'm gonna be honest. As of the recording of this video, Joaquin and I haven't finished the song. So I don't feel as connected to it as I might otherwise. And I'm honestly I think it's the worst book of this year, but I think it's a good book. So I think it's like I actually wrote C+ originally, but I feel like I need to give it a B. It could be even an A if I get like really attached to it from the Great Gatsby. Shout out, link to that in the description as well, and I'll play a clip of it here as well. So I'm gonna leave it at B. I think that's a good middle ground for this book. Then we have The Hiding Place, which I'm not gonna lie, the fact that it's a true story made it so relatable, and maybe that's why I really like Up From Slavery. And maybe not relatable is not even the right word, but just like, I guess, awe-inspiring. Like, this is something that's actually happening, or actually happened to real people. It was really inspiring. It really showed me like the power of prayer, and I think this actually might be the best book I've ever read, at least in literature at Covenant. But these three are they're definitely the top ones. As of now, we haven't finished reading Till We Have Faces the second time. That's why I talked about the first versus the second. I'm gonna be honest. I guess I'll let my future self tell you because I'm gonna edit it. As of now, I'm thinking A or S, which is really cool. Honestly, the main reason I don't want to give it an S is because I don't want it to just be like some cheesy story of, oh, it went from the worst to the best just because of the insight you gain from freshman to senior year. But I honestly have gained a lot of insight into the book. I understand even just the plot better and also the symbolism, which is really cool. I've appreciated it. It's also ironic because in 9th grade when I said it was like the worst book of the year and maybe the worst book I'd ever read, Mr. Sim said, you should read it again when you're a senior. And now he's teaching us again and we're reading it. So that's pretty cool. But I don't want it to just be like some cheesy story just for a cheesy story. So I'm trying to make sure if I were to give it an S, it would have to be validated. And as of now, my thinking would be it's probably lower than the other three in the S tier. But yeah, it's fighting for that spot. So I'll let my future be tell you what I decided. Of course, this would happen. So we have finished reading Till We Have Faces for a second time, this time as a senior. And I promise that I didn't do this just to be cheesy, because I actually really don't like that aspect of it, but Till We Have Faces was my favorite book this year, I think. I don't know. Honestly, like, The Hiding Place was incredible. So was Till We Have Faces. I think this time I understood so much more of the symbolism, and just helped me understand and appreciate the story more. So it literally, one of these two is probably my favorite literature book of all of Covenant, but I don't know which one. I promise I'm not just doing it to be cheesy. I actually don't like that aspect, but Till We Have Faces is going to be at least an S tier and first or second favorite book at Covenant. I think one of the things I appreciate most about this book is the self-wrestling that a rule/queen has, and how that can be at least somewhat relatable to all people. So that's pretty cool. So that is going to do it for today's video. Hopefully y'all enjoyed. If you want to do your own tier list of these books, you can just check out the link in the description and make your own. Let me know your thoughts. Also, let me know any differing books that you read in your time at Covenant, depending on what grade you were in and what time you were here. And yeah, let me know any differing opinions you have, or just thoughts that you may think about regarding my tier list. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.